With both the Halifax and Nationwide telling us that house price inflation across the UK is running at around 10%, estate agents are saying the reason why prices continue to run hot is that there are unusually low numbers of properties coming to the market. But is this really the case? Do an increasing number of properties sell without getting as far as an estate agent listing on Rightmove? Welcome to this edition of IG Trade in the Markets podcast. I'm Jeremy Naylor. We're talking now to Mark Wells, the founder and chief executive of Invisible Homes, a website that describes itself as a little bit like a dating app in matching buyers and sellers of properties online. Mark, welcome. First, this market seems to be attracting more and more attention these days. Why? What's brought it about?
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for inviting me onto the podcast. Yes. So Offmarket has always been an important way to sell property. And over the last number of years, it accounts for 1 in 5 sales in London. And indeed, outside of London, the numbers are pretty similar as well. So a lot of properties sell that way. When the market starts getting hotter, if you like, there is naturally an increase in sales off market, because when an estate agent takes on an instruction, they'll often know 10 of the best buyers out there that are very motivated, have been waiting for something just like that. So they can just introduce it to those people before putting it on Rightmove and Zoopla. And lo and behold, it sells for a great price. And the rest of the market never really knew that it came on and was sold. So in times like this, there is a natural push towards that off-market space.
Define in a deeper way what off-market really means, because you're talking here about presumably finding a match in the market before it gets to a listing.
Correct. Yes, I think that's important. And I think that a lot of people define off-market in lots of different ways. For me, the simplest way is, look, Rightmove, Zoopla, Boomin are the aggregating sites. Those are the public listings. And if something sells off market, it essentially means it wasn't visible on those sites at the time it was sold. Now, usually that's in the period before it was listed on Rightmove and Zoopla. So often estate agents will say to a seller, hey, look, what we're going to do is we're going to have a period off market to our best and hottest buyers, because those are often the most motivated. They've missed out on properties before. They've got a natural fear of loss. We know that they're serious. We know they've been looking for a long time. They've probably been outbid on something else. Let's introduce it to those guys first. And hopefully we'll get a great price that way. If not, then fine, we'll put it up on Rightmove and Zoopla, and we can bring in other buyers. Because whilst Rightmove and Zoopla and all the other aggregating sites are really powerful ways of finding buyers, there's a reason they're there. They exist for a really good reason that all the buyers are on those sites. There's a flip side to it. And the flip side to it is, if you put a property on Rightmove and Zoopla on those aggregating sites and it doesn't sell straight away, it's date stamped. It says it was listed on the 1st of March. And by the way, there's been a price reduction on this date. What happens is the open market quickly becomes tired of a property, thinks there's something wrong with it, thinks there's a reason why everybody else hasn't bought it, which very often there isn't. It's just had bad luck, just hasn't had that buyer straight away. And what happens is you get in this downward spiral, and sellers have often been buyers, or almost always have been buyers, and they've seen that happen to the properties as they're searching. So they're rightly afraid of being one of those properties. So if a estate agent comes to them and says, well, look, we're going to have this pre-market launch, we're going to give you 2 bites of the cherry, and we're going to be able to focus in on the best buyers first and probably get you a better price anyway, then that's going to be super appealing to a seller. And of course, the better the market, the more appealing it becomes.
Okay, so what do you do in this space? And I think I've got to ask what your relationship is here to who, because do you have a relationship with this seller or with another agent? And what do you get out of it? Who do you charge? Where do your charges lie?
Yeah, good question. So what we are is a service for estate agents. We are a subscription service to estate agents. They pay us a monthly fee to be able to use our platform. And the idea, I was an estate agent and a buying agent actually for about 20 years in the London market. And what I've always seen is that problem of the open market, this danger of going stale and the preference for being off market. But the danger of off market to us has always been, look, it's great because you've got this targeted market, but it's also quite a restricted market. You're reliant on what it used to be like in the 80s and 90s when estate agents didn't have Rightmove and Zoopla, and it was all on instinct and who they thought were the best buyers and who they thought was the best match. So whilst you've got this intelligent off-market space that serves the purpose of not letting properties go stale, that targets the better buyers, at the same time, it can be too restricted. There are often better buyers out there than what the estate agent knows of or gets round to calling or can be bothered to call, et cetera, et cetera. So what I said was, look, this is a great space to be in. This is a really important area that has never been professionalized, and we need to come along and fix it. So what we did was create a platform. That platform brings all the buyers to one place so that estate agent can put those off-market properties within the platform, as they do in Rightmove and Zoopla, but with a different goal in mind. So we launched in prime central London. So we're Fulham, Hammersmith and Fulham, Kensington and Chelsea, Westminster, and we're about to expand well beyond that and throughout the UK. But the idea is all the buyers that register with us to receive these off-market properties can then be sorted, and we've had, by the way, 20,000 register over the last couple of years. We can then use data to do what the estate agents are trying to do in that off-market space. So we can use the data of the way people interact with the website to work out who are the most motivated buyers out of the whole marketplace, and who are the people that are actually the best match for a property, just like Netflix does. We can learn about what a buyer wants so that we know what they want almost better than they do, just using data and machine learning and the standard things that the machine learning AI algorithms do. So we've got a different purpose to Rightmove and Zoopla. Rightmove and Zoopla, all properties to all people. Let's target the right people with the right properties at the right time that really suit them, so that we can achieve better sales, faster sales, and for higher prices, but where the buyers get a much better experience as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think as a seller in the past, I can vouch for the fact that you do get people wandering around houses just for a Sunday afternoon out. Clearly, you as a filter can get round that sort of time wasting process, which is obviously a big benefit to people wanting to sell. But what other criteria do you want to see, or what criteria do you want to see met in a buyer? I mean, must they be unencumbered? Do they have to have cash? Do they have to know the area? What sort of qualifications do you have of listing a buyer on your site?
It's a really interesting question, because actually it's very important to not create too much friction to getting the buyers on there. There's a natural filtering process. When buyers see an advert for invisible homes, which they tend to see on Google or Instagram or Facebook or one of those things, or through one of their friends, they know that it's a way of making sure that they have access to all the options. So, and we want that the numbers of buyers to be there. So we don't want to stop buyers from signing up, but at the same time, there's a natural filtering process. Can you be bothered when you can go straight to Rightmove? If you're not a serious buyer, you have to register all of your details. You have to confirm your mobile number. You have to confirm your email address. You have to say exactly what you're looking for so that you can get matched to the properties that match what you're looking for. So there's a natural filtering process that some of those tire kickers, if you like, can't be bothered to go through that process. Then it's a different problem that we face. It's like, just like you say, how do we work out who the good ones are? And that's about data. So we can watch and see the process that a buyer goes through from the time they first register to the time that when they're just sort of trying to work out what prices are, just trying to get a sense of the market. And we can see how they interact with properties. We, unlike Rightmove and Zoopla, we actually call our buyers. We have a team of customer success that speaks to them, helps them understand how the site works, but also works out what stage they're at of the purchase process. And if they're just looking around, they haven't sold, they just want some idea, well, that's one set of buyers. But of course, they become hot buyers later on. And what our system will be able to do is, by the change of their activity and the feedback they're giving on viewings and the feedback they're giving into the site, is to be able to identify when they go from being, if you like, tire kicking, but just researching the market, to being, hey, look, I'm quite seriously looking to buy now, if the right thing comes along, to, God, I'm desperate, I've missed out on two things, I really want to buy now, I've been outbid, I'm a really hot buyer. And we can identify that through the process.
Now, you're a private company. Invisible Homes is a private company, and I believe as founder, you still own the business, are you? You're a business owner?
Yes, exactly.
So, what are your aspirations then for the company? Where do you see this going? You've already said you cover a small, concentrated, very wealthy, it has to be said, area in London. Do you see your coverage expanding out across the rest of London?
Absolutely, and through the UK, very much so. Because what you've got to bear in mind about off market is it's almost all estate agents sell off market at different stages. So it's useful to all estate agents across the country at all different price ranges, because it's not, you don't use off market only as a pre-launch, although most people do. What they also do is say, well, look, it's the summer now. It's July, August. There's no point in being on the open market because there are only a few buyers out there that are seriously looking right now, or it's December and January. So suddenly 4 or 5 months of the year, you don't really want to be on Rightmove and Zoopla gathering dust in inverted commas when you're less likely to sell. So that's a great time. And that's quite a lot of the year where Invisible Homes comes in as an extra string to those agents' bows. So for us, we're a platform business model. A lot of the demand comes from sellers. Every day we get 2 or 3 sellers coming to us saying, look, we want to sell this way. We want to combine it with an open market launch. We want to do this. And we can just push those towards the estate agents who are members. So yes, we're a private company. Yes, we're a new platform business. Yes, we're trying to do something different to the off-market space in the same way that Rightmove and Zoopla did back in the late 90s to the open market space. But we're planning to do something much more sophisticated, because that's what has happened to the internet since. And I think it will have a real impact on the marketplace from a buyer's perspective to be helped through the process, from a seller's perspective to be naturally helped by data through the process, and slightly less reliant on the motivation of your estate agent because the tech's doing it for you. So I think there's a huge market for what we're doing. We intend to expand very quickly. And because we are a platform business model and we get so many buyers and so many sellers selling up, the agents seem to really love it.
Could this area not become very crowded? As I said, you are at the moment in a relatively exclusive part of London. There are presumably competitors in and amongst the London area within the M25 that are doing a similar sort of thing, I would have thought. Do you find yourself nudging up against other business models that are trying to eat your space, but maybe just have something slightly different? Or do you think there's space for more than one company doing all this?
Good question. So look, funny enough, there are lots of people that sell off market. They usually tend to be for the investment space where you get companies that do off market sales. We're actually the first off market platform. So whilst all estate agents offer off market, we're the first time there's been a platform to professionalize that space. Do I think we'll get competition? I'd be surprised if we don't. It's a great new model and it works really well. We're bound to. But I think what's important is, one, already 20% of the market is selling this way anyway. That's a lot of properties when it's between 1 million and 1.3 million properties selling every year. That's a lot of properties to be selling this way. But I think also, now that it's being professionalized and now that we can do with data what Rightmove and Zoopla don't want to do or don't need to do with their aggregating sites, and we can actually make it a better way to sell. My expectation is, and our view is, that over time, more and more properties will sell off market and more time will be spent in that off market space because it's more and more effective. So what we think is that 20% will go up to a much higher number. And there's a good chance that a day in the future, almost every property will start off market or before it goes live on the open market. And perhaps our space will become more effective than the open market and replace it, although I don't expect to replace it altogether.
When putting questions together for this interview, I thought about the future of this particular space, and I got to thinking whether or not perhaps maybe you might actually be vulnerable to a takeover from an estate agent, but clearly that was not likely to happen. I'm now wondering, perhaps maybe having spoken to you, that might be Rightmove could actually be interested in this space as well. Is that a truism, do you think? Do you think that Rightmove has an aspiration to get into this off-market area? I mean, that Rightmove has grown, as you said, I mean, 10, 12 years ago, without the internet, Rightmove really wasn't, there was no reason to exist. Now here we have the internet, all these new business models have cropped up. Do you see yourself as being vulnerable to a takeover from someone like Rightmove rather than the state agency?
I think, again, really interesting question, because I think about it a lot. Rightmove is a pretty incredible company, let's not forget. And bear in mind, there were all these companies when aggregation came up as an idea, and we're sort of 1998, I guess. All of these guys started fighting for the space, and there were companies that we will have forgotten about, whether it was Prime Location that's still there, was bought by Zoopla and Rightmove. These are only the ones that won, and there were a whole bunch of others that died along the way or were bought out by the other agents until we've ended up in what is broadly a duopoly of Rightmove and Zoopla, where Rightmove has about 70% market share. Now, Rightmove is a huge company now. It runs on, it turns over about 180 million every year in revenue, and it has an EBITDA of 75%. It's incredibly profitable and an incredibly effective business. Now, it's not going to want to change that business model very quickly. It's more, they're not going to suddenly say, oh, well, actually, we're going to do things differently. Because as with Zoopla, what they want to do is their business model relies on, we give as many leads as possible to estate agents of buyers wanting to see property. And that's where they're competing with Zoopla. If they suddenly change that business model and say, oh no, we're going to help buyers find the best property quicker, which is what we're doing. Or do you know what? We're going to help sellers sell quicker in a shorter period of times to more effective buyers and deliver more motivated leads. Well, suddenly their USP has been diminished. Do I think they're going to change to doing what Invisible Homes does? Absolutely not. What they do is brilliant and it has a huge space. Do I expect to be bought out in the future by a Zoopla who will bring it in as a new brand within their spectrum of different companies? Probably, and I'm okay with that. I think that'll be a great new string to their bow, whereby estate agents will do exactly what they're doing now. You'll be able to go live on Invisible Homes and then onto Rightmove and Zoopla. So I don't think that they would necessarily copy us directly. Could they start up a competing brand? Probably, but we've got first mover advantage, and I think that the space requires a new startup in a modern way to start it from the ground up, to really have an impact on the way. We expect Netflix to know what we're looking for. We expect Amazon to be able to suggest, and Instagram to know what we want, where before we do. That doesn't happen in the property space because aggregation is just the way it's done. When we start something that does it better, there will be a move towards that. But I don't think it will be those companies changing their business model. It'll be about competitors coming in and perhaps then merging with them.
Ultimately, market listing for companies like yourselves, we haven't yet seen it. Of course, not one company has got to the stage where it's got to that sort of size, but I can see after having spoken to you that there is potentially a very big market for this area. We are so very much property orientated in this country. I can see this sort of thing really taking off in a big way. Assuming it is Invisible Homes that gets there first, are you raising funds in the meantime? Do you have to raise funds? Is it very capital intensive business?
Well, look, we're a startup, and as a startup, we're always raising funds. I doubt there'll be a time until we exit where we're not raising funds at different levels. So yes, we're just finishing off a fundraise at the moment for $500,000. We then start another raise on the back of that for another $500,000. So we're pretty early stage, but we've had so much traction. We've already sold. Funny enough, before we became a platform, we wanted to prove how effective the model was by selling properties directly ourselves as estate agents. We don't do that anymore, to be clear, but we did. And we sold around the Fulham area, which was our proof point, if you like. And we sold about 50 properties and became the fifth biggest agent in the area within 6 months, which was amazing. There was this huge demand of sellers, huge demand of buyers. We get 50 to 100 new buyers signing up every day at the moment. And what happened was we immediately found areas where it was so obvious that we sold more effectively than the open market. It was really exciting. So I'll give you an example, because anecdotes for me are really interesting. We brought on a property that was a very cool flat. It was a ground and lower that had been done to a particular style by the owners. But it didn't have outside space, and it slightly lacked light on the lower floors, and it was slightly in the middle of nowhere, between two major areas. Been on the market with two big high street, well-known, sophisticated impressive estate agents for 4 months, and it had 3 viewings. It just didn't tick the boxes of the way Rightmove and Zoopla work. He was frustrated. He gave it to us. We then matched it not by just location and price, but we were able to match it using the algorithms to people who wanted something special and cool and interesting. And it had been on at 1.85 with them, 1.85 million for 4 months. We put it on the site. We had 10 viewings within a week. We sold it for £2 million to a seller that was looking in Kensington with a maximum budget of £4 million, but they were just location ambivalent. They just wanted something very cool. And there are all of these edge cases out there where Rightmove and Zoopla limit people to, oh, it's just 3 beds in X area, right? And that's all you can really match by. And there's this huge demand for a more sophisticated way of matching. So it's interesting to see the different areas where it applies and is more and more useful.
Okay, Mark, we'll leave it there, but thank you so much indeed for joining us, explaining this new market of off-market sales in the property sector.
I love chatting to you. Thanks so much for inviting me along.
That's Mark Wells, the founder and chief executive of Invisible Homes. For more videos from us here at IGTV, join us on Twitter at IGCom, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.